Hi there, everybody. Welcome to this session. I'll share my screen so you can read along with what we're about to be doing. Here it is. Today, we have the open discussion of workbook lessons 330 through 336 of A Course in Miracles. The idea of these open Zoom workbook discussions is to look at the 7 lessons of the week before. These 7 lessons form the starting point for our conversation about the principles that are being presented in them. We don't have to touch on each and every one of them. We will proceed as the Spirit moves us. Let's start by quieting our minds. Allow your breath to settle in a comfortable pattern. Breathe in and out, gently and quietly, in and out, in your own comfortable pace. Direct your attention towards the empty receptive expanse that is your mind. Simply look at the thoughts that seem to pop up out of nowhere and watch them move past, leaving your mind receptive and ready to receive the Holy Spirit's inspiration. Peace to our mind. Let all our thoughts be still. Now let's focus on our presence together here in this space. We've come here in the name of Jesus, in the name of love. Jesus, who has promised that when 2 or more are gathered in his name, he will be there with them. And so we trust that he is here with us. Let us open this session with a prayer. It's adapted from lesson 329. You can read along if you want to. Father, we thought we had wandered from your will, defied it, broke its laws, and interposed the second will, more powerful than yours. Yet, what we are in truth is but your will, extended and extending. This we are, and this will never change. As you are one, so we are one with you. And this we chose in our creation, where our will became forever one with yours. That choice was made for all eternity. It can't change and be in opposition to itself. Father, our will is yours, and we are safe, untroubled, and serene, in endless joy, because it is your will that it be so. Today, we will accept our union with each other and our source. We have no will apart from his, and all of us are one, because his will is shared by all of us. Through it, we recognize that we are one. Through it, we find our way at last to God. Amen. Thank you. All right, the first lesson for today is 330, and that's the last lesson in the series of 10 lessons that follows the essay, What is Creation? We've read the essay, What is Creation, in the last 2 sessions, so I'll skip that for now and have a look at 330. And then after 330, a new essay comes, and we'll look at that extensively. Who would like to read 330? Go ahead, Andrew. Oh, hold on. Yeah.
Shall I read it?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. I will not hurt myself again today. Let us this day accept forgiveness as our only function. Why should we attack our minds and give them images of pain? Why should we teach them they are powerless when God holds out his power and his love and bids them take what is already theirs? The mind that is made willing to accept God's gifts has been restored to spirit and extends its freedom and its joy, as is the will of God united with its own. The self which God created cannot sin and therefore cannot suffer. Let us choose today that he be our identity and thus escape forever from all things the dream of fear appears to offer us. Father, your Son cannot be hurt, and if we think we suffer, we but fail to know our one identity we share with you. We would return it today to be made free forever from all our mistakes and to be saved from what we thought we were.
Thank you, Andrew. Would anyone like to share about that?
Yes,
Go ahead.
actually, I made and I'm trying to bring up my note here that I made about that. Are you still there? You just went away. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I said, to me, it's confusing for him to say they. Who are they? To me, there is no they, there is only I.
Which line is that exactly?
Well, now I'm trying to get back to the screen. Oh, why should we teach them they are powerless when God holds out his power and his love and bids them take what is already theirs?
Line 3. Yeah, if you look in the line before, you see, why should we attack our minds and give them images of pain? That's what they is referring to, our minds. So you might just as well think of it as it.
Right.
Why should I teach my mind that it is powerless? That's actually what it says.
Yeah. Okay. Because to me, there's only one. So to say they is plural or yeah.
But I suppose, that's the reality we think we live in. And so that's where he meets us.
Yes, yes. I think we just need to keep our knees flexed, so to speak, and go with it. When he says they, it means our collective mind, the they that we think we are.
Right.
And if we didn't think we were, if we really knew we were one, I suspect we wouldn't even be here.
Exactly. Okay. It's the dichotomy that we always bump into. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. This reminds me of the lesson, only my thoughts can hurt me. And I will not hurt myself again today. We but fail to know our one identity we share with you. So this comes back to that question, who do you think you are? How do I see myself? Do I think I'm the son of God, or do I think I'm this body that's walking around bouncing off of things, usually not in a pleasant way? That's the decision that I have to make. It says heaven is, in one of the lessons, it says heaven is consciously chosen. I have to consciously choose to see myself as God's son. And what goes along with that is I have to consciously choose to see myself as sinless, as innocent.
Guiltless. Yeah.
Right.
Guiltless. And all of that. When I do that, then I won't hurt myself again today. But until then, I'm trapped in this illusion where I do think I can be hurt without knowing that I'm doing, as the Course says, the secret of salvation is but this: you're doing all of this to yourself. So
can you believe it?
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. How do I see myself? And the way I know how I see myself, the Course tells me, as you see him, you will see yourself.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at my brother as guilty and evil and as a pain in my neck, and I'm going to see myself that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Oh, can I share a funny thing? that leaks up. That this what Peter is saying reminds me of. Like 2 weeks ago or so, I suddenly got inundated on Facebook with friend requests. You know, I would get a request once at 10 days or something, and all of a sudden I had like 50 a day. I don't know why, but in a vlaag van waanzin. Well, how do you say that in English? I was puzzled, so I just clicked accept. I thought, let's see what happens. And after 3 days, it stopped. Later on, I noticed that Facebook has a way of grouping it in a different place. And so it still continues, but I didn't see it. And so I thought it had miraculously stopped after 3 days. But it means that people are contacting me and sending me messages that people I have never heard of. They're from all over the place. They're from the Far East, Pakistan. They're from different countries in Africa, some in the United States. And at first I thought, what am I going to do? This is awful. How can I clean up my Facebook? And then it struck me, I'm doing this to myself. And my brother is showing to me where salvation is. And so all of a sudden I started looking at all these different people in a new way. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. And so it's lessened a little, but I still get like 10 or 15 messages each day from unknown people. But now I look at them sort of like, who is going to contact me? What will they offer me? Will they offer me their blessing? Can I offer them my blessing? And it's become so much fun. And whereas at first I thought, oh, this is horrible. I'm going to have to delete my account. I have to go in again. And, and what Peter was saying, that just reminded me of it. Yeah. Thanks for letting me share.
I've started blessing all the robocallers that I get on my phone. I've been blessing the spam email that I get, the phishing, all of that.
Good idea.
I just said, bless. Jesus said, bless your enemies. It's like, I don't even have to look at them as enemies because they're an extension of me. And it's an opportunity for me to love myself when I least like who I'm being. That's my definition of unconditional love in my book. And it's like, I hate getting that spam or whatever. And now it's like, no, wait a second. I can love that part of me. I can bless that, and the other thing is, in my mind, if people really have to try to scam me, they must be in pretty bad shape, so I can give them my blessing. I can reach it. I could have my heart reach out to somebody who has to scam another human being to get by in life. I mean, how tough must their life be?
Yeah.
So I can bless all of them and feel good about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, what I've noticed is that of all those messages that I get, maybe 5% I would say is either nasty or money oriented or sex oriented, but 95% is just sweet people. I mean, I don't have time to answer all these people, but sorry, Sharon.
Don't you think they're coming to you from this class that's going out, or this discussion that's going out over Facebook?
I have no idea. And I don't think I have any link with them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, what matters to me at this moment is, at first I thought, oh, how I'm going to distance myself from this, and how I'm going to keep my Facebook account pure. And it turned around completely in welcoming, these different people that I would otherwise not even know existed.
Yeah. How can I see this differently?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't think the dynamics, Facebook technically wise, has changed or is changing. It's just my way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we have a look at the essay that's next?
Yes.
And the essay is called, let me share. And maybe what is it? It's called, I'll scroll up just a little. What's the ego? Let's have a session first with us, each of us taking a turn and describing what you think is the ego. Just, to prep our minds.
Yeah.
Who'd like to take it first? What is the ego?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I call it the imp. People my age remember back, there was a cartoon, Ben Gay had this little devil that would stab you in your shoulder with pain, and if you put Ben Gay on, the little devil, would go away. And that little devil to me is the imp. It's always there to stick you here, stick you there, try to, of course it's much more sophisticated, but than poking. It gets into your mind in other areas. But to me, it's actually, to me, it's the opportunity. It's what brings the opportunities to forgive. If it weren't for the ego, I wouldn't know where I was wrong. So I bless the ego in that respect, because boy, I want my big goal, what I want in life is to be able to forgive everybody for everything in each moment of my life. And when that's my goal, when I can get there, I'll be gone.
The
So
little
that's
imp.
the ego to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, to me, the ego is my body. It's the part of me that identifies with my body. It's the Andrew. It's my, not my spirit self, but my physical self.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, Maggie.
I think of it as the part of me that believes in separation and believes in having an individual identity. It ultimately believes that there's sin and that everyone's a sinner and deserving of punishment. But I kind of see it as like one of two thought systems that I can choose from.
And the other being?
Spirit.
Sorry? Spirit.
Yeah, Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Thank you. Peter?
I'm going to take somebody else's definition, somebody that I studied the course with. He always says that the ego is the devil. It's what we commonly think of as Satan or whatever. But he also says it's important to remember that we're talking about a divine ego, in the sense that it's not really, what's creating this illusion is not the little ego that we walk around with all day saying, I am Peter and I, hear me roar. It's the subconscious program that's creating this whole illusion that we're not conscious of it. We're not aware. That's why we think things are happening to us rather than through us. So he emphasizes that it's divine is probably not the right word, but it's kind of a supernatural. It's bigger than what we currently walk around with, thinking that's our ego, our identity, our personal identity. I also like the definition so I think it's in the text in I think chapter 21. He says, the course says, the ego is the belief that something can happen to the Son of God against his will, and thus against the will of, or without his will, and thus without the will of his Father. I lived most of my life thinking that stuff is happening to me that's against my will, and that's in a very practical, boots on the ground sense. That's the ego.
Thank you. Susan, would you like a turn, or shall I go? Okay, I'll go. Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I had to step away. There was a cable guy here.
Oh, that's all right. We were each taking turns in sharing what we think the ego is. So,
I am so sorry. I'll have to watch that a replay.
Yeah, you'll have to watch it. It was really interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well,
I
think ego is a fabricated lower state of, I don't want to pollute this group's word mind, but it's a lower state of humanness, in my opinion, that's personalized with all kind of psyche and convinces it's created out of confusion of not being able to deal with the moment. So you come up with a whole bunch of stuff to get yourself through each moment, convincing yourself through the ego that the ego can take care of it for you. But the ego is never satisfied, so it's always eating, it's always consuming,
yeah.
it's always taking, and it's never totally satisfied.
Thank you. Very nice. Yeah. All right. What I think the ego is, I think of the ego in terms of a thought system, what Maggie was saying. And it's a collection of thoughts that I have mistakenly become identified with. And those thoughts, which thoughts are they? What thoughts are they? They're all the thoughts that aren't joyful, peaceful, loving, and light. So every time I think a thought that is not peaceful, loving, light, free, beautiful, is an ego thought. And that system feeds on past knowledge. And so when I go for that, I'll just be stuck in circles, the rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And so that's how I think of the ego, not as an entity, but as a thought system that loops in on itself. All right, let's have a look at what the essay says. Andrew has just read, and somebody else wanted to read too, and I didn't see it. Who was it that had wanted to read? Or who would like to take a turn now? Reading. Peter, would you? I see your hand moving, your arm. Okay, I'll call it up. There we go.
What is the ego? The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, born in a body, doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. It is the will that sees the will of God as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful. Life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. The ego is insane. In fear, it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, in separation from the infinite. In its insanity, it thinks it has become a victor over God himself. And in its terrible autonomy, it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. The Son of God is egoless. What can he know of madness and the death of God when he abides in him? What can he know of sorrow and of suffering when he lives in eternal joy? What can he know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, of hatred and attack, when all there is surrounding him is everlasting peace, forever conflict-free and undisturbed, in deepest silence and tranquility? To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. In suffering, the price for faith in it is so immense that crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar to illusions to the shrine of life itself. And peace will be restored forever to the holy minds which God created as his Son, his dwelling place, his joy, his love, completely his, completely one with him.
Thank you. I remember reading this the first time, and after 5 paragraphs, I was just, what did I just read? Nothing landed, nothing registered. And still, some paragraphs are difficult to grasp what he's really telling us. Sometimes it's so grim.
Grim?
Yeah, in the sense like where its sickly followers prepare to die. I mean,
Well, yeah, but that's only if you buy into its philosophy.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's laughable from our side of the fence. Poor guy.
You mean it was dictated tongue in cheek?
No, I mean, I don't know if it was dictated tongue in cheek. I just think that the ego is pretty pitiful. Yeah. And I'm not saying it doesn't have a control over me many times, but it's doing these lessons, these daily lessons, and being faithful to it really helps spotlight it. It's getting harder and harder for it to, pop up and be believable. And
do its thing.
Yeah, do its thing, right.
Yeah. And then I love in paragraph 5, yet will one lily of forgiveness change it. I just love that.
Yeah.
And as we'll see, the series of lessons that follow this essay, they all focus on forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, you have a question. Was there somebody else as well that had a question?
I do.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And after that, Peter, go ahead.
Okay. I can't see the group, but
all right. Here you go.
Yeah. So my question is, from a divine plan, what was the purpose the ego was intended to serve? Was it I mean, I know how it can derail us if we start believing it and following it. It's like a little child trying to rule the kingdom, a spoiled child, but what purpose from a divine creation standpoint could the ego possibly serve? Like,
who would like to take that?
I think none, but go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. I think the ego is the symbol of separation. The ego is idolatry, and I think our bodies are idols of the ego. And well, that's it. It's separation. The ego is all about separation from oneness, from God, from unity, from each other.
And it's not real.
So looking at the precision of the universe and the quantum field and how everything has come from such deep understanding.
I don't believe that. I don't believe there is a universe.
Yes, Susan,
universe is part of the world.
Sorry.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I know that's really interesting, the whole subject of quantum physics and how I think they're starting to see it points to God, but still.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. That the broader intelligence,
personally, I think that is part of the ego's little plan. Like, look how real this is. Look how it meshes together. It'll do anything it can and use anything it can to convince us that this world is real, that there really are planets out there. And there's really, the weather and all of this is real when it's not. It's just not. In reality, it's not even here. I think that's for me, that's what's true.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sharon. Peter, go ahead.
I was going to say there is no divine plan that involves the ego.
Right.
There is no, and I think it's somewhere in lesson 130 something. The course says there is no world. This is the central lesson the course attempts to teach. And if there's no world, there's no universe. If there's no universe, there's no quantum physics, there's no divine plan. The premise, which is so hard to grasp for many of us, the premise is that this is, in terms of ultimate reality, this is all what we experience on a daily basis is all illusion. There's no reality to it at all.
Yeah.
And so So that counts everything that we think, including our children and our grandchildren, and including now the good news is the love in those relationships is real. That survives. The love that we experience, he says in the Course, he says, even in this world, the relationships you make are very real. And it's the love underneath the relationships that's real. But everything on top of that, and everything that we seem to perceive through our senses is part of the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no world, there is no divine plan, there are no quantum physics, there is no universe, and there is no ego.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a while, certainly it has taken me many, many, many years to even begin to appreciate that. And what do I do with that? But he also says, denial, he says denial of the body, but I extend that to denial of the world is a particularly unworthy form of denial because while we think we're here, it seems very real. And he says the mind, we're afraid of the power of the mind, and the mind that is powerful enough to make a world can change it. But while we experience this world as real, it will seem very real to us because of the power of our mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not here to say, I can only speak for myself. It's this dichotomy. There is no world. And yet, while I think I'm in the world, I need to address it as if it was real, but through the lens of the Course, instead of through the lens of my ego.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very well said.
Yeah, I like it.
Thank you, Peter.
Does that answer your question, Susan?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. It's an excellent question, and sometimes I feel like excellent questions, they have answers in layers, and so
Sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maggie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. And I was going to say to Susan, like, I really empathize with that question because I it's a good question. It really is. And it's a thing that we can just kind of get stuck on and confused on, I think. And it's the Course really tells us that there's some questions that there's not a good answer to, that the intellect will there's only an experience that will make the question meaningless. And I think I saw Johanna's got the ego and the miracle from the clarification of terms queued up next, but I was just thinking of that while I was listening to you, because in that section, there's a lot of questions about what is the ego and where is it and what is a miracle, and there's a point where it says we can't really make a definition for what the ego is, but we can say what it is not.
Yeah.
And it also
would you like to
says,
read it? Would you like to read it? I can call.
Oh yeah, do you want me to read that whole section?
I'll call it up in the share screen, and then you can read the whole. I highlighted some. I didn't copy it entirely, just some of it.
Okay.
That I thought was pertinent to our discussion. Go ahead.
Yes, you're probably right on the same line of thinking I'm on. So the ego, the miracle, this is from the clarification of terms in the Manual for Teachers. So it says, what is the ego? But a dream of what you really are. A thought you are apart from your creator, and a wish to be what he created not. It is a thing of madness, not reality at all. A name for namelessness is all it is. A symbol of impossibility. A choice for options that do not exist. We name it, but to help us understand that it is nothing but an ancient thought that what is made has immortality. What is the ego? It's nothingness, but in a form that seems like something. In a world of form, the ego cannot be denied, for it alone seems real. Yet could God's Son, as he created him, abide in form or in a world of form? We cannot really make a definition for what the ego is, but we can say what it is not. And this is shown to us with perfect clarity. The ego's opposite in every way, in origin, effect, and consequence, we call a miracle. And here we find all that is not the ego in this world. Here is the ego's opposite, and here alone we look on what the ego was, for here we see all that it seemed to do, and cause and its effect must still be one. Where there was darkness, now we see the light. What is the ego? What the darkness was. Where is the ego? Where the darkness was. What is it now, and where can it be found? Nothing and nowhere. Now the light has come. Its opposite has gone without a trace. Where evil was, there now is holiness. What is the ego? It's what the evil was. Where is the ego? In an evil dream that but seemed real while you were dreaming it. Where there was crucifixion stands God's Son. What is the ego? Who has need to ask? Where is the ego? Who has need to seek for an illusion now that dreams are gone? Now, what is a miracle? A dream as well. But look at all the aspects of this dream, and you will never question anymore. Look at the kindly world you see extend before you as you walk in gentleness. Look at the helpers all along the way you travel, happy in the certainty of heaven and the surety of peace. Are you ready yet to help me save the world? Ask this instead of what the ego is, and you will see a sudden brightness cover up the world the ego made. No miracle is now withheld from anyone. The world is saved from what you thought it was. And what it is wholly uncondemned and wholly pure. The miracle forgives, the ego damns. Neither need be defined except by this. Yet could a definition be more sure or more in line with what salvation is? Problem and answer lie together here, and having met at last, the choice is clear. Who chooses hell when it is recognized? And who would not go on a little while when it is given him to understand the way is short and heaven is his goal?
Thank you, Maggie. Isn't that a wonderful piece?
Yeah.
Love
Beautiful.
that.
And the good thing is, if you know, for the purpose of our session, that it ends with the miracle forgives and the ego damns, and the lessons continue on the theme of forgiveness. And here you'll see the lesson titles of the. Is there any of these lessons that's any of you would like to focus on? There is no conflict, for my will is yours. Fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Today I claim the gifts forgiveness gives. I choose to see my brother's sinlessness. Forgiveness lets me know that minds are joined.
I would like to focus on 335. I choose to see my brother's sinlessness.
Okay.
I
okay with everybody, because then I'll call it up in the online version, 335, right, Sharon? Here we go.
Sin is insanity. It is the means by which the mind is driven mad. Is that what I'm supposed to read?
Hold on, I'll call it up. 335. Now you see it now?
Yeah, I choose to see my, oh yes. Forgiveness is a choice. I never see my brother as he is, for that is far beyond perception. What I see in him is merely what I wish to see, because it stands for what I want to be the truth. It is to this alone that I respond, however much I seem to be impelled by outside happenings. I choose to see what I would look upon, and this I see, and only this. My brother's sinlessness shows me that I would look upon my own, and I will see it, having chosen to behold my brother in its holy light. What could restore your memory to me except to see my brother's sinlessness? His holiness reminds me that he was created one with me and like myself. In him I find myself, and in your son I find the memory of you as well.
Thank you, Sharon. Go ahead.
That's just my goal, to see all of my brothers as sinless, because if I see them as sinless, I don't need to, there's nothing to forgive. Forgiveness is not appropriate if you don't see any sin in myself. If I don't see any sin in myself, then I don't need to forgive myself. And it's only when my ego pops a memory in of something in my past, to me, that's an opportunity to forgive it and to deny the ego and to turn towards the Holy Spirit. And I just want to be reminded of that all day long, every day. Keep being reminded.
And, you know, all the people that you meet during the day, they all remind you of that assignment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Very, very well said, Sharon. Thank you. Anybody else about this lesson or another one? Oh, Andrew, go ahead.
Yes, I would love to know how to do that, because if you watch the news and look at, don't watch the news, but
Don't watch it. Don't
I'm,
watch
I'm,
it. There's nothing that can bring you. It can't not bring you any peace. I mean, I can't tell you what to do. I mean, shut my mouth. I shouldn't be telling you what to do at all. I can only say what works for me. What works for me is not to watch anything about the news at all, no matter what, and trust that the Holy Spirit is going to lead me away from going somewhere where there's going to be a mass flood or something, you know. And even if it didn't lead me away from that and I went into a mass flood, that's a lesson God would have me learn too. But I don't believe that anything on television has anything to offer me. And it only brings pain and unrest.
well, thank you. I kind of got addicted to the news when I retired, after I retired. But actually, I can relate an actual event, something that happened Friday. It was actually the day I read this lesson. A couple days a week, I volunteer at a wetland park, giving tours to visitors on a big electric cart and telling them, pointing out birds and things. And there's a few other volunteers that do the same thing. Well, Friday, I read this lesson in the morning and I was feeling wonderful. Was going to beam love to everybody who I encountered. As I pulled into the parking lot, another volunteer, a married couple, pulled in right behind me and pulled right next to my car, even though it was not a good place to park. And someone on a motorcycle came in to the parking lot and just stopped with a very loud exhaust, and the radio turned up really loud. Well, the other volunteers got out at the same time I got out of my car, and they told me that something happened and there was a road rage incident, and this guy followed them all the way in. And they were very upset. And I was still, beaming love to everybody. So I said, well, he's just standing there with the motorcycle running. He's not saying anything. Let's go inside. He'll probably get tired and drive away. So I went in and we all went in together. And I just started going our startup procedure. I turn on some computers and things, and we have to get carts out. But after a minute, the manager, because there is staff that works there, the manager came by with his truck with the lights flashing, and he ran the guy off somehow. And then we had a great day at the park with lots of visitors. Closing time, the guy with the motorcycle comes back and a couple other motorcyclists with him. Well, we were still closing up, but the manager went out there, he called the police, and it escalated to something, but no one was injured, nothing happened. And I felt fine all day. I felt peace. It never felt threatened, but I just feel like, well, maybe I could have done something more to de-escalate the situation, but I didn't think of it at the time. I thought of it in the middle of the night when I couldn't fall asleep in bed. I could have walked over to the guy on the bike and said, well, I understand one side of the story. Would you like to tell me your side and maybe de-escalate it? But I didn't think of it at the time. And it's just hard to see your brother's sinlessness when something happens like that. I'd like to see their sinlessness, but I think it's more of just not something you can actually see with your eyes. You just have to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus was crucified. He saw his sinlessness in his persecutors, but it's still, we saw it a different way, or at least the witnesses there and the apostles and all, they saw it a different way. That's all.
Thank you, Andrew. Would anyone like to respond? I see two hands. Okay. Sharon, you started first, and then Peter, and then Maggie. Maggie's hand was up.
So I don't have anything to say. I understand.
Okay.
Maggie.
Yeah, Maggie, and then Peter.
Okay, so I raised my hand when you were talking about the news and how to watch it or not watch it. And I agree, Sharon, you like stopped yourself and you said I shouldn't say what anyone else should do. So I'll preface what I'm going to say with that too. I think you got to follow your own guidance ultimately, and what works for one person might not be what someone else needs. But I know for myself personally, I did for many years completely keep myself separated from the news. It was what felt best for me for many years. And I don't doubt that now or think that that was wrong. It was what was best for me then. But I have found myself much more recently, just I think within this year, maybe the past couple of years, I've found myself starting to feel like, let me look at this stuff. It's mine. It's all coming from me. And as I keep my eyes blind to it, I don't actually address it. I let myself pretend that it's somehow not connected to me, that I'm not experiencing it. And if I don't watch the news, I won't experience it. So somehow I'm separate from it. I can keep myself separate from it. So I've more recently been feeling inclined to look a little bit, but I still keep that balanced out so that I'm not just all day long reading treacherous news, because I think that wears on one, even as you're doing your practice, right?
Wears on one.
It does. But I do, so I guess I'll give this little story. One day I was vacuuming, and often when I'm doing house chores and vacuuming, I'm having a lot of communion with spirit at the same time. It's just a time that I tend to do that. The mind's occupied with something that you don't really need to be thinking much about, right? So I can be over here thinking other things. And I often, while I'm doing these types of chores, just have whatever's popping up into my mind, ego's bringing me something. Remember that time? You should be mad. And I just am taking the opportunity to just see it another way as I'm doing that. And so I was vacuuming off our couch, and I can still see it. I remember what I was doing as this happened. And I all of a sudden had all of these thoughts and feelings coming up around just the idea of the bottom line being the most important thing, money, the bottom line being the most important thing, and how much of our culture is built on that. And I was like, well, I don't know what all this is coming up in me right now. And I don't live my life like that. I don't think like that. Get this away from me. I don't want it. But then it just occurred to me, if it exists in the world, it has to exist in my mind. And so it is mine. So, okay, I'll forgive it. I'll bring that to spirit, just like I bring my memories of Maggie Fitzsimmons and what she's experienced, even though it's something that doesn't seem to be affecting Maggie Fitzsimmons. It can't be separate from me, really. So I do find now that I do try to practice looking a little bit and just trying to see it differently with spirit. So I think, Andrew, your question, how do I see the sinlessness in my brothers? I mean, I was just reading a news story just the other day about a little girl who was murdered by a UPS delivery driver. I mean, it's really tough to read that story and see that person as sinless, right? So long as I think that there's a person that murdered a little girl. So looking at the news or the situations in my actual life that are in front of me is like an opportunity to keep asking spirit to show me that this is not truth. This is not what really is. And if you wanted to de-escalate something, you could see to spirit, is that for me to do even? Because maybe you didn't do it, Andrew, because maybe that wasn't what was best. Maybe it wasn't what you were guided to do in that moment. And those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Maggie. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. Great discussion. A couple of things I want to say. Forgiveness, for me, forgiveness is a shorthand way of saying don't make it real. And I can make something real by actively paying attention to it or actively avoiding it, thinking I have to avoid it. I'm giving it power. So I personally don't watch any news, haven't for many years, but I'm also aware that the question to ask, and the course talks about this a lot, is why am I valuing that experience, and what is my purpose? If my purpose to watch the news is to forgive, then I'm going to have one experience. If my purpose in watching the news is to see guilt in my brothers, I'm going to have a different experience. And it's either one is going to reinforce a different view of myself. So I just don't I don't find any value for me either way in politics, the news, world events, stuff like that. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do that, other than to recognize that if I'm actively avoiding it, I'm making it just as real as if I sit in front of it and am taken over by it. The other thing I want to say is, in this lesson, thank you guys for pointing out this lesson, forgiveness is a choice. It doesn't just happen on its own. I have to consciously, it's like I have to consciously choose heaven. I have to consciously choose forgiveness. And then is to remember, I never see my brother as he is, for that is far beyond perception. What I see in him is merely what I wish to see, because it stands for what I want to be the truth. This is how deceived, this is how out to lunch I am. It's like how deceived, how much I've deceived myself. It's like, and I have a personal situation I'm not going to talk about now, but it involves a family member, and I get to live this now on a regular basis and say, wow, there's something about this person that upsets me, and it's there because that's what I want to see in this person. And it's like, and so I'm really looking at that. Why do I value that? Why would I want to see that? And of course, it's not a conscious thing, which is why I was saying before, the ego is a devil, but it's a subconscious, it's not a conscious process, but it's like we're forensic investigators. We have to look at the scene of the crime and then work backwards and say, why would I want to see this? What is it fulfilling in my idea about me or whatever? So
what's your benefit of it in it?
What's the value in this for me? Why do I value this? And then to make the decision, the choice. I choose to forgive this in this other person because I recognize, again, this is a big lump to swallow, but what I think forgiveness recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. Damn. Thank you.
You speak for all of us, I'm sure. And you were saying you can watch the news, or you can decide not to watch the news. And when you decide to watch the news, you have a choice. You watch from the place of forgiveness, or you watch from the place of blame and making guilty. And there's no other choice, right? It's always this choice. And if we think that we're neutral, could you elaborate on that, Peter, please?
I have no neutral thoughts.
Yeah, so if you watch the news, you have a choice. You either forgive or you blame. Is it as simple as that?
There's no such thing as neutral in this world. And he says in here, the only choice is between love and fear, and we're always choosing. Mm-hmm. But I think it's one of the early workbook lessons. I have no neutral thoughts. There are no neutral things. Everything represents a choice for love or a choice for fear. Yeah. Again, the challenging part is this is not a conscious thing. I'm not sitting here and saying, I'm not consciously aware that I'm judging against, it just looks like they're jerks and I'm right about them being wrong.
I know.
And there are a lot of people who would seem to agree with me. I mean, doesn't that mean that we're right and they're wrong? But that's, that's the seduction of the ego. That's the intoxication. Do you prefer that you be right or happy? You know, I have a whole chapter in my book devoted to this. And the very short answer is, in order for me to be right, I have to make somebody else wrong. That's the problem. There's no such thing as right if I'm not making somebody else wrong. And of course, making somebody else wrong is judgment, condemnation. You know, it's all the stuff that he is telling us we don't want to do. So,
Comparison.
yeah.
Thank you. Very clear. All right, you guys, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to pull up the document again, and I will read the closing prayer. And before I read that, I want to thank everybody for being here and for contributing and for just holding space for everybody else and for those who will be listening in later on. From chapter 31, section 8, paragraph 9. Let us be glad that we can walk the world and find so many chances to perceive another situation where God's gift can once again be recognized as ours. And thus will all the vestiges of hell, the secret sins and hidden hates be gone, with the gift being forgiveness. And all the loveliness which they concealed appear like lawns of heaven to our sight, to lift us high above the thorny roads we traveled on before the Christ appeared. Hear me, my brothers, hear and join with me. God has ordained I cannot call in vain, and in his certainty I rest content. For you will hear and you will choose again. And in this choice is everyone made free. Amen. Thank you all. I hope to see you next week. All righty.